Hey YouTube, Kiratwig here, bringing you all my 60,000 subscriber Yu-Gi-Oh! Special. For the other times I've hit certain peaks in the subscriber mark on YouTube, I've thought of doing pack openings, and a couple people have pointed out that my channel is mainly a channel that does deck profiles, so instead of a pack opening to celebrate 60,000 subscribers, I thought I'd try something new. Today I'm going to be going over my top 10 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For well over 10 years now, and I have accumulated a good number of decks throughout the years, but there have always been those decks that have just held a special place in my heart to me, and I figured I'd go through each one of my 10 favorite decks. These are decks that I've had since the very beginning, that when I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks that I've just, consistently added support, decks I normally play at locals regularly, and just overall my favorites that I can never see myself getting rid of. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. I did think of doing a deck collection, but I normally like to do those usually, once every year, and not really close to the 1 year mark since the last one. We'll probably do it after the Darkwing Blast booster set. So let's go ahead and just go through my top 10 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. We'll go ahead and just start off. It was really hard just to pick the placements for each one of these decks, but I put Lavels at number 10. You're going to see a good number of dual terminal storyline decks on this list. I built this deck when it was first originally released in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Terminal. For those of you who don't know, the Dual Terminal was a machine where you would get these foil-like cards out of, and you can always build the decks earlier than they would have been released from the Hidden Arsenal sets. And I really like Lavels. Most of the time when I played this at locals, it was the Shooting Quasar variant. When I originally played it, we had Rekindling at 3. The deck definitely got weaker when Rekindling went to 1, but then the deck did get, pretty much full powered again since Rekindling's at 3, and the good majority of the other cards that you run in the deck are still at pretty full numbers. And we even got some newer cards in some of the later sets to help with the generic playstyle. But I would say the Synchro Laval build with Quasar is definitely my favorite. I don't have every single staple extra deck monster in each deck just because they are mixed throughout the 10 decks for the videos, but I would say even out of just the dual terminal storyline, I do like a good majority of the newer ones that came out from Hidden Arsenal 5 and 6, and you'll see a good number of those decks throughout this video as well. It was very hard to pick, like I said, the placement for each deck on the video, but after just taking into consideration playstyle and just some of the older decks, Lavels were probably, compared to the other 9 decks for this video, ones I just don't play as often. I would like to play, but maybe we'll see some newer support later down the road. I know they just had some in Ghosts from the Past, but just have to wait for some more to come out as well. For number 9, my next choice is a fairly new and recent deck, and that is Evil Twins. This is one I have been playing at locals recently, quite regularly. I do plan to actually try out some Sprite variants as well. That's why you can see some of the more up-to-date hand traps in the deck as well. For this list, I built this deck originally once when it came out from the Grand Creators, but I believe, why can't I remember? The Genesis Impact, that was the name of the set. I actually ended up getting rid of the deck, but then when they got their Link 4 monster, I was inspired to build it again. I got the good majority of the core from a buddy of mine at the card shop, and I had a few cards here and there for the deck, but I really do like the play style. It's just a different kind of Link play, and like I said, with sprites just recently released, mixing with this deck could be quite a powerful combo with the different Link 2 monsters you make and the Rank 2 and Link 2 options that the sprites have to offer. A lot of people have even told me, why don't you make a full collector rare version of the deck with Starlight rares included as well. It definitely did pop up as a consideration for me to try one day. I guess I'll just have to, really, really like the deck. It is definitely in my top 10 for my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. I don't really like many of the decks that come out of the latest sets where they introduced the 3 new decks, but Evil Twins definitely did stick. I like their playstyle. It's fun, and a lot of people just don't know how to respond to it. For number 8, I decided to go with an Arc 5 favorite of mine, and that is Phantom Knights. Phantom Knights have gotten some pretty relative support over the years, and with the Phantom Rage booster set giving us cards like Torn Scales, I just added on to the playstyle. I would play this a good number of times at locals, just with the new playstyle with Cherubini and Tour Guide adding to the mix. I never got the Brave package to use with it. I know a lot of people really did like it. I stopped playing when we had the Fusion Destiny lineup, but since, Verd Anaconda Conda. I don't even think I still have my Vert in this build. Nope. Got hit. It kind of hit the weakness of the deck, but the main focus of the deck is still its rank 3 play style. So that's what I still continue to use this deck for those options. It might have been higher up on the list if I, maybe had invested in the Brave engine, but overall, I still love this deck. I go for more of the Xyz playstyle that, Yugioh tried to go for whenever I can make the Dark Rebellion or the Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon with this deck, or have that option. It's always a fun add into the deck for sure. It has more of the Link option at the moment as the build I have. And one thing to remember with these top 10 decks of mine, I'm always changing up the deck lists as well and trying out new things with each one of them. That's why they stay pretty relevant to me as well with each build that I try. And another thing, with some of my more favorite older decks, there is a theme that I keep with each one. And I get these Pokemon deck boxes. I know for Yu-Gi-Oh! To have a Pokemon deck box is kind of weird, but Phantom Knights always stay in this deck box with the markers and everything. As you see, I have some of my side deck in here as well, and extra cards also mixed in. But that is the first of the 3, because there are 2 additional deck boxes that I use for 2 other decks that are on this list as well, which we'll get to in just a bit. But now, moving on to number 7, we have Gustos, another hidden arsenal favorite of mine. Gustos were always ones that I really liked playing just for their recycle playstyle, where you could destroy a Gusto and then another one pops up back on the field. And this deck also recently got newer support in the Dawn of Majesty booster set, which I really do like when decks can get support. It just makes me want to play it more with the new support added into the deck. And the playstyle didn't really change much with the new support added. You still go for the Daigusto Freeze playstyle of giving your opponent damage every time one of your Gusto monsters attacks. We have the new Win the Wind Chandler as an option for special summoning, giving you more ways to go into some of the extra deck monsters that we run in the deck as well. And just having some of the options, even use cards like Miracle Synchro Fusion to get into Ultimate Axon Kicker, definitely do keep this deck, playstyle fun for me. And I also like how much this deck is involved in the lore of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being more involved with some of the other decks you see, like how Winda is part of El Shaddoll Winda. Just seeing all the many different Gusto cards mixed in with a bunch of other decks just gives me, a sense of happiness every time I see them in those decks, knowing that the lore is still alive and well with all the other different decks we see getting released in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's a big part of it also for me, that what I enjoy with my top 10 decks, and that is that they always have some sort of lore or playstyle behind them for a good majority, whether it be from the Dual Terminal storyline or even just from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Moving on now to number 6, we do have another Hidden Arsenal one, and that one is the Gem Knight deck. This one, for the good majority of the Hidden Arsenal stories, is probably my favorite, not only for the fact that Gem Knights were pretty meta relevant for a good while. They got some new support in the latest booster set, Power of the Elements, and I have this deck completely updated. I did do a recent deck profile update for it, and their playstyle, just being able to loop constant fusion monsters on the field, is one thing I love about it. I was really, really sad with Link format when this deck took a hit for its playstyle not being able to be as strong as it could be, because you had to get a Link monster out, which Gem Knight Phantom Quartz definitely did help, but just with the fact that you had to use those Link arrows, once Master Rule 5 became a thing again, and I could make as many fusion monsters as I wanted, you can definitely believe this is one of the first decks that I built with the new option of just being able to summon out fusion monster after fusion monster. And the new fusion monsters we got from Power of the Elements definitely did help with my decision to include this deck in my top 10 list of favorite decks for Yu-Gi-Oh! All right, we're in the top 5 now for the number 5 spot. I went with another deck that actually got recent support in Power of the Elements, and that is Morphtronix. Now, this is a deck that I regret, trading away at one point, my dual terminal Selphons. I have only common ones in the deck at the moment. I do hope to either get super or dual terminal ones again for the deck, but even the fact that the new support means that we had to include Gadget Hauler is not a direction I thought that Morphtronix would take. But even the fact that we're getting even newer support later down the road in the next Brothers of Legend set, or if it's not called Brothers of Legend, Battles of Legend set, I can keep adding onto this deck, including new equip spells and just new ways to make the deck work. It's another Synchro variant, but Power Tool Dragon is also one of my favorite 5D Synchro monsters. So it, Lifestream Dragon, and then the newer forms of Power Tool Braver Dragon and Morphtronix Earfawn being all new additions into the deck, keeping it really, really fun as a play style as a whole. And just for the fact that I do one day want to also attempt the Telethon FTK at locals, just being able to special summon the new Telethon off of Telethon as long as you have the extra deck plays, and then using Cannon Soldier for a big amount of hijinks for sure. The number 4 spot is also the deck that takes up the water Pokemon deck box. We had the Phantom Knights in the grass deck box. The next one is Pendulum Magicians. I was debating between Pendulum Magicians and Odd Eyes, and I really do like Pendulum Magicians a lot more than Odd Eyes. Just their play style. You don't have to rely on too many high-level monsters. You use the low-level Pendulum Magician monsters, and if I ever want to switch back and forth between this deck and Supreme King Zark, it's quite easy because you use the majority of these monsters. You just change around a few things, adding in some Zark support. But even with the setup that this deck is meant to do, I had a lot of fun using it at locals. Even recently I've been playing it and just being able to make some of the boards. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of the Artifact Dagda play, but if you want to play at locals and survive, it definitely has to be an option in the deck. And that's what I've noticed with a lot of the decks, but this is probably one of the more usable decks I use at locals, along with the next deck as well. The main thing I'm currently using at locals is Marine Cess. I didn't include it in my top 10, but I may change things up, later in a couple years if I'm still using it, if it really helped me a lot at locals. There's all these changes to the top 10s, but now we're in the top 3 for my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh decks, and at number 3 we have the deck that uses the fire deck box as well, and that is Salamangreats. I love this deck. This is probably my favorite Cybers deck of all time. It's probably the deck I've used the most at locals as well, just being that go-to deck, and this deck can even still get stronger. The fact that we have Gazelle at 1, if it ever gets put to 3, I think this deck could be incredibly powerful. We even just got Circle at 3, and that added a big change to the deck. The fact that this deck has been hit a lot from the ban list and just recently brought back with the addition of Mirage Stalio. I do only run 1 in the deck still, but this one, like I said, was a Cybers deck that I really did like playing at locals just for its consistency. I knew the deck inside and out with all of the different plays you can do, and just the reincarnation link summoning, and also the fact that Soulburner was one of my favorite characters from the Vrains anime. So whenever I saw him use the exact same cards and combos that I did in the Salamangreat deck, it felt really awesome looking at that in the anime. I don't really see that too often from the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, so when I did see it, I was definitely happy. All right, 2 decks left. For my number 2 spot, I have Gishkis. Gishkis were one of the first decks I actually played when I started returning to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals scene. It was another dual terminal deck, one that was pretty easily built as well, just because I got a lot of the cards from the dual terminal and kept them this entire time. This deck, my favorite play was always to get out the 2 Gishki Zeal Gygus, and then after either shuffling back my opponent's cards, leaving them nothing on the field, attacking with both of the Zeal Gygus, and then overlaying the 2 of them to go into Gustav Max for the finishing 2,000 points of damage against my opponent. We just recently added Gus Kraken back into the deck. I think it was a couple ban lists ago where this card was taken down to 3, but for a good while, Zeal Gygus was my main go-to one. I would burn down my own life points for the draw, but the draw was normally worth it depending on what I would draw off of those cards, and it's just one that I definitely can once again know how to play pretty well, and hopefully we will get some new Gishki support in the future as well. A lot of the other decks on this list that are favorites of mine have seen updates to their support, but that is one I would definitely like to see more of, whether it's a new main deck monster or just an additional ritual monster, you name it. All right, if a lot of you know my channel and you didn't see the number 1 spot coming, but my number 1 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh deck is Naturia's. This deck is what I base my whole channel around. A good majority of things, whether people trade with me and they see all the Naturia elements I implement with my envelopes or anything like that, the banner on my channel, good part of it, and I always love updating the Naturia deck. This was one that made me get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! I just saw these cards when I first got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist Revolution was the set that was out. People were, had a bunch of bamboo shoots in their binders, Star Strike Prismatic Blast was just around the corner with the inclusion of cherries, and another deck that just had new cards in the dual terminal. I have my dual terminal set of Cliff here. This was just one that I pulled myself. I was like, I really, really want to build this deck. And we are actually getting new support for the Naturias in the next main booster set. So just the fact that it's been so long and I can finally update this deck with new Naturia cards is all the motivation I need to make this my #1 deck. Just being able to lock people down with the Bamboo Shoot play was a favorite of mine as well. And I'll still continue to use this deck to this day and probably far into the future. If I ever stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which I really do doubt, this will definitely be a deck that I want to keep just as a constant reminder that I really did enjoy this game when I did play it full-heartedly. And that is it for the entire video. I hope you all enjoyed this look at my top 10 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Like I said, I wanted to take a different route this time around for the Yu-Gi-Oh special, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Maybe we'll try something different for when I hit 70,000 subscribers, but for this, I definitely had enjoyment looking back at what my 10 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh decks are, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kiratwig out.